Alright, Militian. Chapter 2. Paul's story. When I opened my eyes, I found myself in the middle of a grassy plain. It was an unremarkable stretch of flat, empty land. But oddly enough, it felt familiar. I tried to determine where I was, and the answer came to mind before too long. I was in the south of the kingdom of Osira, near a town I'd once spent some time in. It was a place I'd stayed back when I was learning the water god style, in Lilia's hometown. Naturally, I concluded this had to be some sort of dream. I had no reason to be here after all. Still, it sure brought back some memories. How many years had I spent in this area? 1, maybe 2. All I knew for sure was that I hadn't stayed that long. Most of my memories from that time period of my life concerning the training hall and the senior students I trained with here, there were a pack of arrogant idiots with big mouths and no real skill. I had actual talent, so they were always busy trying to keep me in the proper place. I'd always hated being the boss around like that. The whole reason I ran away from home in the first place was to get out from under my old man's thumb after all. Hold on. Wait a minute. Dude, that's big. So Paul ended up right back where you know, the big incident happened as to what he did to Lilia and everyone was fucking pissed. That moment? Oh, that town? Holy shit. Okay, well, let's take that in for a second, right? A lot of people, and this was even my own mistake, and I know I've admitted this to yeah, after he polled. I acknowledged my own mistake when I was watching episode 16 and 17, which is the fact that I completely undertook the importance of the displacement issue, i.e. his hold on. His hierarchy of needs, right? For Paul, you've been displaced. Where are you? If I took you right now and I threw you somewhere else that may have some trauma-filled information right now, you don't have a home, you don't have anything there. You just suddenly appear there. Where are you in the pyramid? Honestly, you're down here. You're in basic fucking needs. You're in survival mode. You're in survival mode. He doesn't even have his basic needs met, if we're going to be realistic about it, because he's going to have to fight for quite literally everything. So why do I bring this up? And if my man was thrown like this, right, and it's in a constant state or fight or flight, does he have the proper reasoning, right? Other than the goal that, for example, Subaru sets the goal of Emilia as his way of keeping moving forward, right? For Paul, it might be trying to find his family no matter what, right? And if he's in this fight or flight, and he might get a home, but he's still in that fight or flight state, what does that do when it comes to actually building relationships or interactions or even re-nurturing some of them? It makes them fucking difficult, right? It makes it extremely difficult. Alcohol doesn't, exactly, Vladisvar, alcohol doesn't make it better. The fact that there's all this pressure on you now about wait, you have to survive, now you have to, there's kidnappings happening, there's all of these other things that are being brought forward. It feels like every action you take is sort of deviating away from the main course. And that can be quite a bit. That can be so much. And that's why I'm looking back at this, and seeing that, I'm fuck, dude. Imagine being displaced. How would you guys have taken it? Anyway, I just find this interesting because this is setting up a beautiful moment that I think a lot of people just read over and they're just whatever. Basic needs not only for himself, but for Norn too. Yeah, too many things competing for priority number one. Exactly, JP stuff. And don't get me wrong, we can all it, and a lot of people make this assumption, right? Which is we all can, especially where we are right now, be able to go ahead and prioritize or read, have two different things at once, right? But you want to know why that happens when we're able to go ahead and do all of these things, for example, have multiple goals and expectations? That's because we're up here. That's because we might be missing one thing, maybe from down here or maybe up here, but we're up here mostly in the self-actualization aspect where we're hitting this consistently. So we're able to go and have more things that we can prioritize. When we're down here, sometimes even ourselves, especially if you're a parent, you come second. That's going to sound fucked up, but think about it this way. Paul versus Norn. What did Paul do with Norn? And it's this whole displacement thing. She looked like she was in good care. She looked clean. Groom wise, hygiene wise, all of that wise. There was no comments made about that. Like in the anime at least, because I haven't read the novels into that. I've only read the chapters that we've done here. She looked as though she was his priority. She looked happy. She was filled in this world that he was trying to build for her. Isn't that something, dude? Where he quite literally put all of his hopes, his expectations, love, all everything for her, while he slowly, like he's in fight or flight, just sinking into alcoholism, if we're being realistic, and giving all these roles and expectations and stuff. And his main thing is trying to find your family. Fuck. That's pressure, dude. That's a shit ton of pressure. Anyway, hell, even the master of the training hall had only ever reached the advanced rank in the water god style. He was one of those old coots who loved to shout about guts and determination, despite the fact it never gotten him much anywhere. I wanted to show every last one of them just how good I really was someday. Never really got the chance, as it turned out. I eventually lost my patience with their bullshit, forced myself on Lilia out of petty spite, and ran away in the night. I'd been looking to get with her for a while, but in that moment, all I wanted was to make a mess of something they all treasured. Victor's note. For fuck's sake, Paul! I know you were 13, but really? I hate it, I fucking love you. Dude, yeah, no, straight up. But my thing is, in an environment like this, let's be realistic, dude. You're in a situation where you're always being looked down upon, right? Because you can never justify someone's actions, right? But you can see what led him to do certain things. And that's why it's like looking at Paul, I'm like, it's sort of a cycle there, right? Sort of a cycle as to like, okay, people tell him not to do something, or like people are being mean to him, he'll lash out. He lashes out whenever he's like constrained in. By the next morning, they were all searching furiously for any trace of me. I fled to a foreign country with a sneer on my face. God, I really was a stupid little shit. I didn't care how much the other students hated me, but taking out my frustrations on Lilia, that wasn't exactly my finest hour. My wind was picking up. The wind was picking up. A bit of dust blew into my eye and I grimaced slightly. A moment later, there was a small tug at my sleeve. Daddy? Where are we? For some reason, I was holding Norn in my arms. She was looking up at me with anxiety in her eyes. At some point, I finally realized I was actually standing in the middle of a field in the clothes I wore at home. I could feel solid ground underneath my feet and the warmth of my daughter's body against my chest. This wasn't a dream. What the heck? I didn't have the first idea of what I was doing here. If I'd been alone, I probably would have gone right on believing it was a dream. But Norn was right there in my arms. Yeah, that was little Norn, all right. My adorable 3-year-old daughter. Thank you, clock. I appreciate it. Sorry, my alarm went off. Okay, hold on. It's approaching. My meal's approaching. Right there in my arms. Yes, I was knowing my all right, my adorable 3-year-old daughter. I didn't hug her like this very often. I was going more of a stern, dignified father thing, so I mostly kept the physical expressions of affection to a minimum. What was she doing in my arms then? Oh, that's right. Now I remember. Just a few moments ago, I'd been chatting with Zenith in our house. You know, girls stop letting their fathers hug them once they grow up a little. You really should get a few squeezes while you still can. Nah, I'm working on paternal dignity this time around. Compared to Rudius, Norn seems like an ordinary kid, right? If I play my cards right, I bet I can convince her I'm the greatest man in the world. Wasn't that your father's approach too? I thought you hated him. You've got a point. All right, let me at her. It was just a silly, casual conversation. Lilia was nearby as well, teaching Aisha something or the other. After realizing that the girl was gifted, she decided to nurture her talents through constant lessons and lectures. I argued that Aisha would be happier if we let her have a more carefree childhood, but Lilia pushed back so ferociously that I had to back down. My thing is, and I think this is a big aspect in everything. How do you define what parenting is? Especially in the olden days. I'm gonna go grab my food right now, but I'll leave you guys with this question as I quickly grab my food. How do you parent? What does it mean to parent? Back in the old days, there were no books. Even today, there's no good books or anything like that. So how do you parent? And why is there, and let's talk about generational trauma in parenting. I'll be right back, ladies and gentlemen. I'm quickly gonna run and grab my food. I'm gonna leave the screen on like this. Be right back. The oldest sibling, dude. I think there's a lot of people that like influence us. Also, I gotta turn on the AC. It's fucking hot. Um, that influence us, right? There's a lot of people in our lives that influence us and like can shape the way that we see what a parenting role is, you know? I'm terrified of being a parent. I don't know how I would react to whatever the culture F up my child would come with. It just scares me. I got lucky with mine. Mm. Guys, that's how you know it's fucking hot in the desert. When I have to turn on the AC in March. Guiding them while taking care of our family needs. The biggest mistake is, well, my thing is, for example, and I think this is a big moment in MT and in general. At what point did you realize that your parents had flaws, right? Because one thing that I'm looking at, and I hope that the editors like are able to go ahead and cut out a lot of the dead noise that happened when I went to go get the food. But like one thing that I'm looking at is like, what does it mean, or what time did you realize that your parents had flaws, and that like, you know, not all of your children are going to be the same, right? Some of them, just because some of them excel in certain areas, doesn't mean that you have to place your expectations hard on them, like you would on others. Norm in my country is that if you were to accidentally get impregnated and you were not married, you are forced to marry your partner. Neko, that sounds rough, dude. That sounds really rough, because what if you guys are toxic together, right? What if it turns into a situation of DV? My relationship with my mother went to shit the year before high school. If you don't mind me asking, what happened? Like, that's big. Also, I don't need my headphones for this. My side piece fell out. Might need to get a new headphone set in a bit. Okay. Now I'm working on my paternal dignity this time around. Compared to Rudius, Norn seems like an ordinary kid, right? If I play my cards right, I bet I can convince her I'm the greatest man in the world. Wasn't that your father's approach too? I thought you hated him. You've got a point. All right, let me at her. It was just a silly, casual conversation. Lilia was nearby as well. I'm teaching Aisha something or the other. After realizing that the girl was gifted, she decided to nurture her talents through constant lessons and lectures. I argued that Aisha would be happier if we let her have a more carefree childhood, but Lilia pushed back so ferociously that I had to back down. The kid was really growing up fast, though. She started to walk at a very early age and absorb everything we taught her like a sponge. Lilia was a good teacher, so that was probably part of it, but Aisha was making so much progress that it made me worry there might be something wrong with Norn. When I brought up Lilia, she told me Aisha's nothing special compared to young Master Rudius, and Ms. Norn's a perfectly normal child. Why do I have a feeling that Aisha can like run a criminal like empire or some shit? Like, okay, let's be real. Let's be real. Rudius, right? Rudius is like the LR fucking Dokkan pool, but Aisha and her emotional intelligence has surprised me in the way it's been described so far, like so much so that I think like she might be able to like, you know, just completely five head a lot of situations, you know. Ms. Norn being a perfectly normal child, I can see that. She seems like a genius and mischievous. True. I didn't really care if Norn was normal or not, but honestly, Or not, honestly. But when I pictured her growing up in the shadow of two brilliant siblings, it made me feel a little bad for her. I remembered thoughts like those running through my mind. And then I was suddenly enveloped in a blinding white light. Yeah, I remember now. There wasn't some sort of memory gap. The fact that I still had Norn in my arms is proof of that. The girl had been walking around on her own for some time now that but now I was holding her in my chest. Something very strange was going on. That much was immediately obvious. Daddy? Norn spoke to me in an uneasy voice. She'd been watching my face this whole time. It's all right, Norn. Gently patting her on the head. I looked around the area and Zenith and Lydia were nowhere to be seen. That was so well timed. Were they somewhere close by, or was I the only one who was brought here? In that case, why was Norn still with me? One possibility did come to mind. I can't believe you guys did that. I was gonna say, one thing I'm kind of curious about. Imagine if suddenly you woke up, like, say that, like, I'm gonna use this as an example, right? You're in the toilet. You know, you ate some Taco Bell and you're sweating. And boom, the white light happens. And next thing you know, you're drowning 10,000 feet underwater, you know, and you're like, like, bro, your lungs just explode instantly or something, dude, because you can't handle the pressure roll change, right? Gotta look for Ariel. Or another one, right? What happens if um you wake up in the core of a dungeon that a dungeon boss is like, is that when the date with Ophelia goes poorly at Taco Bell, Kai, as you know it? But dude, like, imagine this, right? You're like, you know, JP is walking around, boom, the light hits him, and next thing you know, he's like being like hypno drowsy by a dungeon boss in the middle of nowhere, like, you know, Elden Ring boss, and he's just like, oh yes, master. And the guy, like, it's like one of those Rick and Morty episodes where like they thrive off of your happiness or your memories or whatnot. So JP doesn't even know. JP's just like in memory land. Ha, that would be fucking terrifying. All things considered, the gray rats are lucky compared to other people and some of the stuff that we heard, like from the anime and what people were saying. Yeah. Mm-hmm. 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 Getting hypnotized would not. Getting hypnotized, getting beheaded would not be fun. Um. Anyway, but yeah, I'd once triggered a very nasty trap in the depths of a labyrinth, a hidden teleportation circle, and this felt very similar at the time. At the time, I was lucky enough to be teleported close nearby, but I'd reflexively grabbed Elenice by the sleeve and as the trap went off, which got her dragged along as well. She was pretty pissed off at me. If you're unlucky, a teleport trap is the sort of thing that can be installed instantly lethal. It wasn't really my fault I stepped on it, since our monkey of a scout should have spotted the thing beforehand, but that wasn't important right now. Basically, teleportation magic was capable of instantly moving both you and anyone you were in physical contact with to a different location. That would explain why Norn was still with me, but the others weren't. Why had I been teleported, though? There had been no warning at all. Had somebody done this to me deliberately? To be honest, I did have enemies all over the place. It wouldn't be surprising if someone launched a sneak attack on me, given all the bad stuff I'd done in my past, but teleportation magic? That just didn't make any sense. For one thing, there was no known incantation for it. To teleport someone, you needed to use either a magic circle or a special magic item. Teleportation items were banned worldwide, and the creation of a teleportation circle had been forbidden for so long that the art itself was at all but lost. Why would anyone go to such extremes, dangerous lengths just to take revenge on a simple man like me? And why would they just dump me in the middle of some empty field? Could one of the students from the training hall have been responsible? Maybe they were still nursing a grudge and teleported me away so they could get their hands on Lilia. Maybe they put me here to send a message, and when I make my way back home, I'd find Zenith and Lilia being despoiled by a gang of vicious thugs. Ooh. Ooh. Oof. Bro, his thoughts. I like how I want. It sounds to me like Paul might have had. No, but Paul has some cognitive distortions, right? That's for sure. That like all or nothing thinking at times. I'm guessing that he was filled with anxiety, and that's often why he like reacted the way he did with emotional dysregulation. All of that, right? And for me, I'm like, I gotta ask you guys, because we know that Paul is trying to make his way home and find everyone, right? We sort of know what happens in future orientation because of the anime. For you guys, would you guys try and find your way home, or do you think you would adjust to the environment that you're in? I don't know, man. I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, I feel like as long as I got word back that my family was safe, I would try and find my way back eventually, but I would start adjusting to the way that things are nearby. Yeah, but what if there is no home to get back to? You get back home, it's gone. TLC, you're on the other side of the world. Yeah. Swiffy, he doesn't know this at the time. Of course not. Funny enough, this is actually something that I talk with my clients about. What is home? Where would you relocate or refine each other if home was gone? If your house was gone? Where would you guys meet? What safety plan do you guys have for meeting if you guys were to come home and for some freak of an accident the house burned down or there was a massive earthquake or something? Where do you meet up? Where do you have a plan for that? Fuck do I know. This is called crisis planning, right? Even in psychology we tend to do this, which is in the event of a natural disaster or anything like this, where is your meeting point if the home is gone and it's not safe or whatever? Yeah, truly, JP. Distance is huge, man. Especially walking. Oh, we used to have a plan to meet up somewhere, but that's before we moved house with another family member. Fair, fair, fair. Hiker that got himself stuck in between a campground during a snowstorm and died there. Oh, campground bathroom, dude. Oof. Moshko is peak fiction, dude. Absolutely. There are a lot of people that shit on the anime and Moshko in general. But to be honest with you guys, as I've said this before, Mushoku is probably one of the best shows I've seen, and one of the best layered contents in it. I think it might be literally like the best in terms of like the way it's growing its like characters and the depth that it has to us. It is a very human story that focuses on change and has the psychological impacts that defines why every character is going through what they're going through. And it's still only the prologue. What do you mean by that, Callan? What are we gonna get? It's only the prologue. What's gonna happen? We're gonna get like an old version of Rudius like roaming the earth, and then we find out he's actually a side character, and this whole thing has actually been like the girl, Orsted, and his journey is actually a main character route, and we've just been like an accidental side story or something. Oh fuck, dude, that'd be funny. Or we're gonna find out that like Elenice actually has a curse or some shit, like an actual deep curse, and all of her actions have been justified, and like they all make absolute sense as to why she acts the way she acts. Yeah, put your tip. What do you guys mean? I'm just saying, because like so far, every little eons, or I'm gonna shut down. Every eons or every little like inkling that I've had in terms of like why did they do it this way in the anime? I don't. I think the anime did fantastic with what it had to do. with the time slot, because you have to remember they have a specific time slot that they have to fill. But so far from what I'm reading with the novel, it did not cover a lot of the small intricacies that is shown in the novel. Yeah. Would you guys agree? Sounds good, Neko. Appreciate you. Because I'm looking at this, and as I'm reading this, it's giving so much more depth and character creation and everything. I feel like having super high libido is such an... It is. It really is. I mean, people have that flaw, you know, character flaw. The anime gets you in. The novel gives you a braingasm. Yeah, I can't show all the internet dialogue depth. Yeah, exactly. Well, I mean, you're limited to time. You're also limited to like episode count. You know, how many episodes do you do per novel or per chapter? Anyways, I'm looking at all of this and I'm like, damn, dude, the way that they set certain characters up is huge. Finally being despoiled by a bunch of vicious... Damn, that didn't sound like something those bastards would think of. Daddy? Don't worry, Norn, it's okay. We'll get back home soon enough. Trying to reassure myself as much as Norn, I set off toward the nearby town. Fortunately, I had an Assyrian gold coin hidden away in my sword sheath for emergencies, and thanks to old habits from my adventuring days, I always kept my sword on my person, even when I slept. The only time I took it off was when I made love. Smart man, dude. Smart man. That's how you do it. That's how you do it. My adventurer card was tucked away inside the holder too. Just a small precaution against this sort of emergency. I made my way back to the local guild and exchanged my gold coin for smaller denominations. The receptionist handed me back 9 Assyrian silver coins and 8 large coppers. They'd apparently hiked their fees at some point, but I had more than I needed anyway. I quickly reviewed the tasks that were available, found one for an emergency delivery, and accepted it on the spot. My card had run out of magic years ago, so the lady behind the counter had to recharge it for me. With the words on it reappeared, she exclaimed to me in surprise and asked me why an S-rank adventurer was taking on a job like this. Since it was an emergency request, the normal restrictions didn't apply, but under normal circumstances, it would have been an E-rank task. I didn't have any real reason to hide my situation, but I didn't feel like taking the time to explain. I fed her some vague non-explanation, then asked if I could borrow the horse. This is one of the special perks of the guild, offered to S-rank adventurers. When you accept an urgent delivery, they just loan you a ride free of charge. Of course, you needed to give the horse back once the job was done, but this time, I was planning to ride off in a totally different direction. I did feel bad for the client, but I had an emergency of my own to deal with. Grand Theft Auto, Grand Theft Horse, Paul Edition. My thing is, I think there's a difference in perviness, right? There's a difference in perviness or sexuality. Why was sexuality thrown in our face in the anime? I think this is a good question. Chat brought it up, and we're touching on the novel as well, because I think this, for Paul's planning and action like sequences, I think it's awesome. But for you guys, why was sexuality such a big moment or thrown in our face in the anime? Why do you think they made that that decision? And this goes for YouTube as well, guys. Like, you know, once you guys get this video, why was the anime? Why do you think people felt so triggered or whatnot? And the sexuality aspects were thrown in our face. Let's be straight up. Anytime sex is a part of life, yeah? And it's not just a simple Japan moment. What is it, for example, why do a lot of people hate Rudy? A lot of people want to be realistic about it. A lot of let's be straight up. Let me cook for a second. A lot of people hate Rudy because he's not your average well-looking character. A lot of people that literally feel disgust towards Rudy is because they don't get the concept of change, and they're more willing to accept if a Chad came along and did all of his actions, they're totally okay with it. Name any isekai that literally follows a similar plot with the Chad that we don't get their background as, like, you know, him being ugly and fat and all of these things. People are more open to it. But the moment that you give someone, you know, a story of being bullied, a story of, like, literally the grossness that his previous life was and what he went through and all of that, right, into who he's starting to become and slightly starting to change, that's too real. It's how can this person be redeemable? Can people be redeemable in a way? And everyone can be redeemable in their own way, right? First or second episode, Rudio goes, "Oh, cute blue-haired lolly girl," proceeds to say lolicon stuff. Just realized this is why many people dislike Subaru as well. Yeah, yeah. And here's another thing. This show has a phenomenal, and the book so far has had a phenomenal way of doing this. We're going to praise something. You think, oh, it's going to be something holy. Panties. Sexual element. Oh, sex is usually done for good and procreation. Sex is just done because they're horny, and that's just how real life is. Oh wow, Rudius might overstep his boundaries, or might do something really creepy. He's having an internal struggle about whether or not he is the current he who he is or his past self. You have this like awesome juxtaposition where they bring out an element. They're like, this is a trope that a lot of people go for, and boom, this is really what it's being used for. And if you're thinking about it as a trope, you're gonna feel like this is fucking stupid. Why would someone show this? This is too much. Oh, you know, Eris does the deed with Rudy, right? Eris is trying to get all, or Rudy has the opportunity to be all sexual with Eris, and you think he's gonna jump at the opportunity, but he makes a promise to wait till he's 15. Eris, displaced, guess what? She jumps on Rudy and takes the opportunity to make love with him, but she leaves him. Sex. The actual references and the cyclical nature of change through sex in this story is breathtaking. The way that they use sex as a turning point every single time it's introduced for characters, wild. Think about it. I think it was episode 1 or episode 2. Paul and Zenith are getting it on. On the outside, you have you know, Roxy out there, you know, doing what she needs to do to get off, right? And you have Rudius behind there, you know, behind the wall, looking at her, right? Hearing, playing the banjo, yeah? Hearing sort of the aspects of sex in terms of sexology in general, and in terms of character creation, it's not just, oh, he's watching this happening. This is a moment where Rudy all of a sudden gains, like, the pedestal work for Roxy starts increasing to a moment where she now reaches godhood, where now she's being praised and kissed the ground where she walks in, right? Because he's now growing in that way, right? Sex is introduced again in the concept with Eris when she's like sleeping, and Roxy, or well, we're not even gonna go that far. Paul seduces Lilia. And yes, we are gonna finish this chapter, I promise. I'm just using it to make an important point because I feel like people just ignore it. Paul said, or Paul and Lilia seduces Paul, whichever way you want to go and frame that, right? And sex is introduced in a concept of there, right? As like cheating, infidelity, this whole concept. Rudy uses it, sees it, right? And this enables character dynamics, family dynamics, how even with flaws, people are still people and people might fuck up from time to time. Sex is brought up again with Eris, where Rudy was gonna go ahead and do some creepy shit and then gets called out, gets smacked for thinking about doing it. You know, parents give the A-OK for Rudy and Eris to go ahead and do the deed. Now he has to make a promise that he won't, like, he's gonna wait till he's 15. Sex is in, you know, in the boat. He has a moment to do it, but now he doesn't necessarily go for it the way he would have in the past because he's starting to change. Oh, wait. Now he has the opportunity. You know, he gets home. He might be of age now. He does it. Everything's content. You think it's going to be a woo moment. Hey, sex is used as a turning point of growth and concepts of shame and despair and loneliness and grief and attachment dissolution. Let's talk about that. Sex is a big component that is used in Mushoku Tensei. It is a theme that is continuous in this show, whether it's the sexology of characters and how characters are introduced and the way that they go ahead and like spark interest and like, you know, change, or the way that they're so sexually frustrated or active or whatever, influencing their decisions. Guess what? A lot of human beings are influenced by sex, money, power, you know, some of the basic needs that are met there. Everyone's a little bit of a different shade of gray. Not everyone is black or white. Sorry guys, I just veered way the fuck off topic with that, but I hope it makes sense. I hope I hope that sort of like Chillin' Butt has been following your stream, dude. Appreciate you. Hell yeah, dude. The turning point of the anime was a teleportation of Orsted. It was sex. Yeah. But honestly, guys, I love going, like, whenever I see something like that, I hope you guys don't mind if I go into, like, a huge rant like that. Because, like, for me, it's like, these are psychological moments. A psychologist looking in at this, I'm sorry, when I'm doing my intake with you, this is one big impact that I'm looking at. Sounds good, Cloud Monkey. I appreciate you. I'm going to keep going into my chicken nuggies. Fall is a verb now. Dude, I've just always been bewildered when people like are disgusted at sex in Mushoku Tensei, but yet they're able to go ahead and like, they're like, we do have a healer, great show, you know, or all of these like weird things, and it's like, okay, dude. Wait, what the heck? Oh, okay, we're good. I guess I gotta go watch that later. I hope that clarified anything. Do you guys have any questions on Mushoku Tensei? Even on YouTube, if you guys want me to make a big rant about something, always feel free to go ahead and ask. Anyway, wait, who hates on Mushoku Tensei? Anyway, the horse they brought out to me turned out to be quite an impressive specimen. I'd gotten lucky. That delivery job must have been very urgent indeed. There was a real possibility I'd lose my status as an adventurer for the stunt, but I could live with that. I wasn't planning to make my living that way ever again. I hoisted Norn onto the horse and hopped behind her. We galloped out of town immediately. Halfway through the trip, Norn fell ill. The girl had no experience riding horseback, and I kept us traveling day and night. It was probably just too much for her to handle. With the time it took to nurse her back to health, I didn't make it back to the Fatoa region for a good 2 months. It took so long, I almost wish we'd just gotten the carriage from the start. I'd long since failed the delivery job, of course, but the breach of contract fee wasn't too painful. At the moment, though, I was in the depths of despair. We hadn't reached the Buena village yet, but I'd finally discovered just how grave the situation really was. Everything in the Fatoa region had vanished. The Psyculturists book club? Oh, bruh. I wish. I was bewildered, totally bewildered. What the hell had happened? Where was Buena Village now? Where were Zenith and Lilia? The citadel of Roa had disappeared too. Did that mean that even Rudius was gone? This can't be happening. At some point, I'd fallen onto my knees in shock and anguish. The words, they were wiped out by a teleport trapped, echoed inside in my mind. It was a phrase I heard more than once back in my adventuring days when I was still exploring labyrinths. Teleportation traps were the one thing you had to watch out for. They split your party up and left you uncertain of your own location. Triggering one was a very, very bad idea. I heard numerous stories of veteran teams that were totally wiped out as a result of those things. Once I'd seen a stunned man recounting how his whole party had stepped on a teleportation circle. He'd managed to team up with another adventurer and find his way out of the labyrinth, only to discover all of his friends had perished. But why had this happened here? To us? Daddy, aren't we home yet? Norn's voice snapped me back to reality. Her small hand was clutching at my sleeve. Without saying a word, I hugged her close. What's wrong, Daddy? That's right. I'm her dad. This girl still didn't understand what had happened, but she wasn't worried because she had me with her. I was her father. I was a father now, damn it. I couldn't show any weakness. I had to stay calm and confident. Everything was gonna be all right. Teleportation was a dangerous trap, and I didn't have any idea why this had happened. But I was alive, wasn't I? Zenith was a former adventurer in her own right. And although Lilia wasn't as nimble as she used to be before her poisoning, she still knew how to use a sword. Aisha, though. Think, damn it. Was Lilia touching her in that moment? I couldn't remember. But I wasn't going to give up hope either. For now, I just believed that Lilia was holding her daughter's hand when the light hit us. Fuck, dude. What a way with words. What a way to, like, expand the character, dude. Like, oh, mi corazón, dude. Every single time, I'm like, you know, as we're going through this, it hurts, dude. It hurts. Paul, for once in his life, had to step up. He had to step up in the gravest moment. I think he stepped up well. I'm not gonna lie to you. Yeah, his life, his mental health might have been declining, and he might have been an alcoholic or whatever. But for Norn, he was everything. He tried to make sure that she was okay. Wow. Wow. When I'm telling you, like, my appreciation for Mushoku Tensei is growing with, like, every book that we read or every chapter that we read. It's true, guys. Like, the way that they're telling the story and the way that, like, we're actually getting those introspective moments of Paul, nothing that would, like, I wish they would have done an OVA or a special episode on this. I wish they would have shown this. Like, legit, getting an episode of this, of how people reacted and how they, like, before Rudius meets him, right? Literally, putting in an episode, like an OVA special or whatever, of Paul running around with, like, Norn or something like this, dude. And then seeing where he appears, I'm just showing a few minutes of the story, yeah. But, like, the actual context in this is, wow. I returned the guild's horse at the nearest town and began gathering information. But very little, like, Callan, very little compared to, like, the depth that, like, this, like, chapter has, you know. I returned the guild's horse at the nearest town and began gathering information. It seemed like this magical calamity had really affected the entire Fatoa region. Philip and Saros were both missing, so Philip's older brother was currently serving as the acting lord. However, he was under intense political pressure to take responsibility for the disaster. From the sound of things, he was on the verge of being stripped of his position. All of the man's energy was currently devoted to protecting himself, so he hadn't taken any real steps to deal with the calamity itself. Instead of looking out for his people, the selfish bastard was trying to save his own skin, and you wonder why I can't stand Asuran nobles. In the course of my investigation, I met an old man named Alphonse. He introduced himself as a butler who had been in Philip's service prior to the disaster. His loyalty was to Boreas Greyrat. Family was apparently unshaken, despite the current circumstances. He was setting up a refugee camp paid out of his own pocket, and he wanted me to help to get it off the ground. When I asked why he wanted me, the old man explained that Philip had sometimes mentioned my name. Apparently, he had pinned me as a man who shows his real worth in a crisis, but also tends to create them through his own short-sightedness. Dude, hold on. I mean, it nailed him right in the head, right? Like, he's amazing in a crisis, but he can create them himself. I wasn't really asking for a critique, but whatever. Alphonse admitted he'd been somewhat hesitant to approach me on the basis of this questionable endorsement. Once he took in the fact that I was Rudius' father into consideration, however, he decided it would be wise to seek my help. I heard a bit about how things were going in the road through letters, but it was still nice to see my son, Well, my son was thought of so highly by someone he probably hadn't even interacted with that often. In any case, I accepted Alphonse's offer and gladly got to work right away. After a month, we made plenty of progress. Alphonse is a man with many connections. In only a few short weeks, he somehow dealt with all the preparations and gathered enough workers to get the refugee camp up and running. It was a seriously impressive feat. For my part, I recruited most of the younger refugees who had gathered in the area into an organization called the Fatilla Search and Rescue Squad. We traveled all across the country, helping out people who had been displaced by the calamity. Of course, my primary objective wasn't to save a bunch of total strangers. First and foremost, I was looking for my family. At this point, the power struggle in the royal capital apparently resolved itself, since Alphonse began to receive disaster recovery funds from the government. I left a note behind in the refugee camp for Rudius and set out with my squad to the holy country of Milis, home to the headquarters of the Adventurers Guild. Azura and Milis were two of the biggest countries in the world. I figured the information I was looking for had to be one or the other. It felt like the logical approach. Honestly, I thought I'd find everyone soon enough. Talk about blind optimism. Wow. Yeah. I can't even imagine the amount of anxiety and stress that every day must be like when you don't know if your family's alive or dead. When you wake up and you're still on the same hole that you're trying to get out of, and you have no way of getting out of it until you find out for sure. But there's no way to find out for sure until afterwards. Fuck, dude. So my question is, because I know we're getting season 2 coming up, do you think that they're gonna be able to fit it nicely, or do you think that there might be some rushes? Is it going to be 24 episodes or is it going to be 12 episodes? Nah, it has to be a full 2 core. It'll be split into 2 core. Because my thing is, Mushoku Tensei, at least from what I know, is really popular, right? At least popular in its own niche. But I'm kind of curious, like, I don't know. How do they plan on like breaking it up? How do they plan, like, how do they do stuff like that in terms of fitting in content? Also, is it being made by the same studio and same director? And I think that's a good question. All right, it is studio bind. All right, cool. My first 6 months in Melis were productive enough. As it turned out, a large number of Fatillans had been teleported to this continent, and we went around rescuing every last one of them. Some of them had already been sold off as slaves, and forcibly liberating someone else's property was against the law in Milis. But the thought of someone selling Zenith or Lilia into slavery made me so furious that I never hesitated to break the law. I stuck stubbornly to a policy of rescuing everyone we found. Once I decided on that course of action, I turned to Zenith's family for help. As it happened, my wife came from a noble house with some real power in Milis. They were well known for producing many famous knights, among other things. With their assistance, I started to lay the groundwork for freeing all the slaves we located. All in all, our efforts went smoothly. We moved I thought her family would not like him. I'm gonna be straight up. Promise botched in the second. True. I don't know. I thought that like her family would have more of a hesitation against him or something. All in all, our efforts went smoothly. We moved fast and found many of the stranded, penniless Fatoans quickly. Once we extracted them from whatever predicament they landed in, we provided those capable of heading back home from themselves with traveling funds, recruited any willing volunteers into our squad, and found places for the children and elderly refugees to stay. Freeing slaves took more effort, of course. We paid for their freedom where we could. Then, when there was an option, we had Zenith's family put pressure on. When that didn't work, we looked for a chance to snatch them from their owners. Naturally, forcibly snatching away slaves didn't endear us to the Millis nobility as a whole. Some of them even sent their personal forces after us. We had a number of fatalities. Still, I wasn't about to stop. I had the moral high ground here. I was saving desperate people who needed help, and for that reason, my squad stuck with me despite the danger. I used everything I had, the Grey Rat name, my connection to the Zenith family, and my reputation as a former adventurer, to find ways around obstacles in our path. But no matter how hard we worked, no matter how thoroughly I searched, I couldn't seem to find any information about Zenith or Lilia. Hell, I hadn't even found anything about Rudius yet. The boy stood out like a sore thumb everywhere he went, but now it felt like he'd fallen off the face of the planet. Before I knew it, an entire year had slipped by. By this point, we were hearing about fewer and fewer stranded Fatoans. We probably found almost everyone we were going to find in both the Millis continent and the southern regions of the central continent. There were still some smaller villages we hadn't searched yet, and a number of slaves we hadn't managed to free, but that was about it. My squad was working systematically to liberate the remaining slaves. Once we got our hands on them, the rest was simple enough. I knew it was a violent approach. I knew that every slave we liberated earned me more hatred from the local nobility. I did it anyway. Sometimes I got my people attacked in the street. Sometimes they were badly injured or even killed. And some members of the squad blamed me for that. Maybe they were right. Maybe I could have prevented things from taking such an ugly turn. But no matter what anyone said, I wasn't going to change my approach now. I was too committed to the path I'd chosen. We started getting more news about the dead Fatoans than live ones. There had been more bad news than good from the start. But the ratio just kept getting worse. To be frank, the people we found alive were very much in the minority. The Itos, Chloe, Laws, Bonnie, Lane, Marianne, Monty. All of them were gone now. Every single time I learned of another dead acquaintance, my blood ran ice cold. Sometimes, members of the squad would break down in tears at the latest piece of awful news. More than once, we arrived just a little too late to save someone. And a friend or family member would take their anger out on me, demanding to know why it had taken so long to get us to that one town or village. There was a risk we'd get ourselves stranded somewhere if we didn't plan our movements carefully. Though, so I didn't think my strategy was wrong. Under my leadership, we'd managed to save several thousand refugees. Of course, if I'd managed to get a hold of the members of my old party, the Black Wolf Fangs, they could have searched the Demon Continent and the Begaric Continent for us as well, but I'd only managed to get in touch with one of them, and he'd vanished shortly after a few brief conversations. I had no idea what he was doing now. I wouldn't call him heartless or anything. We never got along that well in the first place. And there had been one hell of a fight when I left. After the way I said goodbye, it would hardly be surprising if they still resented me. Why the hell did I have to leave things on such a sour note anyway? I was such a stupid kid. But there wasn't much point dwelling on that now. This is art. This is art. Hi, back. I'm Ed. What's up, Raccoon? How was your nap? Dude, this is beautiful. This is just straight up beauty. This is a thing of beauty, like the introspective moments. Yeah, and also the fact that he's getting blamed for everything. Let's talk about drinking, dude. People drink to escape their problems at times. Oh, you got the Luke's VA to do it? He was under a lot of pressure. He was under a lot of expectations. He was supposed to be the one that went and did everything and saved everyone. He liberated thousands of people, but people still hated him. Nobility still, like, you know, think about that, dude. How would it feel? If you put yourself in Paul's shoes, would you be okay? Honestly? This gives Paul, we see in the anime, much more weight and impact. Absolutely. 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 It's not just, it's a thankless job. It's people yelling at you. It's a lot of hatred that's coming your way. It's you not knowing where your family is. It's you trying to keep your daughter alive. It's you realizing that every time, you know, the ratio is getting worse and your family might be dead because no one's reaching out. The son that's supposed to stick out like a sore thumb wherever he goes. No news of him. And he's the one that sticks out like a fucking sore thumb anywhere. No news whatsoever. Aisha and Lilia, no news. Zenith, no news. Yet the expectations and the roles that are still being placed on him. Oof. Oof. Like, dude. Dude, that's... Oh. Oh, my kokoro hurts just reading this, dude. My kokoro hurts just fucking... Putting myself in Paul's shoes, it's like, this hurts, man. Had trained his mental fortitude to be an S-rank adventurer. Masha Tank, I actually would agree with you. Without Norn there, he probably, I think, mental-wise, what would he have to live for? I'm gonna throw that to you guys. Especially after, say, a year's time comes by. And he keeps getting worse and worse news that the ratio is dropping and whatnot. Do you think he would have fallen more into alcoholism than he is currently? A year and a half passed since the displacement incident. These days, alcohol was the only thing that kept me going. I started drinking in the morning, and I kept right on going into the night. I was literally never sober. I knew I should stop myself, but whenever booze wore off, the exact same thoughts always popped into my head. I'd tell myself that my family was dead. I'd think about the ways in which they might have died. I'd wonder what had happened to their corpses. I couldn't think about anything else. Can you really blame me? Even that absurdly talented son of mine had vanished without a trace. I didn't want to believe it. I really didn't, but in all probability, he was dead. They all had probably died sometime in the last 18 months. With tears running down their faces waiting for me to rescue them. The survivor's guilt is insane. The survivor's guilt is insane in this, dude. The survivor's guilt that would come from something like this, dude, would be a lot of inner blame and stuff. That's huge. Every time I pictured it. School Kong, welcome back. Thanks for the sub. Every time I pictured it, I thought I might go crazy. What the hell was I doing here anyway? Why had I wasted all this time helping a bunch of strangers? I should have headed straight to the most dangerous parts of the world from the very start. I could have managed somehow even if I was on my own. I made the wrong choice. And now I'd lost my family. The people I cared for most had been stolen from me, and I could never get them back. I didn't want to believe that, of course. So I drank. When I was drunk, at least I could feel like happiness, something like happiness. I wasn't doing much real work anymore. In another 6 months, we'd been starting an operation to send many of the Fittonians we found on the Millis continent back home. These were old people, women, children, and people so sick they could barely move. Even if we gave them money, there was no guarantee they could endure a long journey. But they all wanted to return to their homeland, and so my squad would be escorting them all the way back to the kingdom of Asura. The planning was moving forward steadily, but despite my role as captain of the squad, I skipped out on the meetings and spent my days drinking. I should be remaining in Milis after the operation, along with the few other key members of the search and rescue squad. Once it was complete, however, our activities would be scaled down sharply. In other words, they were going to cut off the search for the victims after only 2 years. It felt much too early. But at the same time, I had to admit that I understood their logic. Continuing to comb the countryside would just be a waste of money at this point. In the end, I hadn't managed to find a single member of my family. I was such a failure. Now that I was plastered all the time, the other members of the squad had started to keep their distance from me. I could hardly blame them. Nobody wants to waste their time dealing with some drunken moron. There were a few exceptions, though, and Norn was one of them. Daddy, guess what? Guess what happened when I was outside? No matter how drunk I might be, Norm would always chatter happily at me. The sweet little kid was all I had left of my family now. Right, there was a good reason I hadn't gone to the demon continent or Beggaret, wasn't there? I had Norn to take care of. What was I supposed to do, abandon my 4-year-old daughter? There was no way I could have left her behind, wandered off somewhere and might easily die. What's up, Norn? Did something good happen? Yeah, I almost fell down the street earlier, but this big bald guy helped me out, and then he gave me this. Look. Victor's know exactly who you think it is. Bro, why is this? With the big smile, Norn showed me the bright red apple in her hands. It sure looked fresh and juicy. Oh yeah, Drudred. Oh yeah, well lucky you. Did you say thank you like a good girl? Yeah, well I said thanks. The baldy patted me on the head. No kidding. I guess you ran into a real nice person. But you shouldn't call him Baldy, okay? Some guys are kind of sensitive about their hair. Chatting with my daughter was always so fun. Norn was the light of my life. If anyone ever tried to harm her, I'd end them. Even if it meant picking a fight with the Pope of the Milis Church. Captain, we've got a problem. Just as I was starting to feel a little better, one of my men burst into my room. I can't say I was pleased to have a conversation with my daughter interrupted like this. I might have tossed the guy out with an angry roar, but Norm was still in the room. Some scrap of petty pride kept my voice calm. What's going on? The guys who went out on that job today was just attacked. What, seriously? Now, who'd go and do a thing like that? Dumb question. It was obviously those bastard aristocrats again. We had explained 100 times that the innocent residents of the Kingdom of Zero had been enslaved as a result of a magical calamity, but the scumbags stubbornly refused to hand them over. As I recalled, we'd been planning to rescue a slave from one of them today. All right, get your gear on, everyone. Let's go. I rushed out of my room and called to the squad's brawlers. None of them were exactly seasoned warriors, but it wasn't like we'd be going up against a bunch of veteran labyrinth explorers either. With my people following close behind, I headed for the place where the fight had broken out. It wasn't long. They'd attacked the building right next door. One of the search and rescue squad's warehouses, a place where we used to store clothing and supplies for our personnel. And guess who's there? Guess who's there? If our enemies had found it, we had a problem on our hands. We might need to change our base of operations. There's only one of them, but he's tough. Be careful, Paul. Is he a swordsman or what? No, it's a magician. Looks like a kid, but he has his face hidden. A kid magician. I knew my people were amateurs, but they were adults in decent shape, and he'd taken down a bunch of them. This kid was probably a halfling, if you ask me. They were always taking advantage of childlike appearances to deceive people. A veteran halfling mage, though. Could I beat him in this condition? I was confident I could handle a typical thug or three, no matter how drunk I was, but nah. It should be fine. I got plenty of tricks up my sleeve. Shaking my head, I stepped into the warehouse and... Da 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 da! That brings us to the end of that chapter. Guys, oh my god, the imagery, the way that it flows. The way that it flows is so nice, dude. Who was a baldy that Norm was talking to? It was Rudyard. You know, it was Rudy's traveling mate. Yeah, because the next one's another chapter, dude. Only part half length. My big thing is, looking at all of this, this gives so much more weight and credence to Paul. This story literally humanizes Paul in a way that I think the anime didn't have an opportunity to expand on. It had minimal opportunity to expand on it, but I feel like this expands on it so much more. Like, and I think any good book does that, right? But like, this humanizes Paul in such a way where you start to feel the way. Like, you're reading this and you start feeling the way that he talks himself. The cognitive distortions that start coming out. You know, I'm nothing. I'm garbage. The only person I can live for is forlorn. You know, I'm disgusting. I couldn't save my family. You know, you start feeling all these weight. And here's the thing, the way that we describe ourselves, right? The stories and words that we use to talk about ourselves and others have meaning. And a lot of people don't like to talk about that. A lot of people like to dismiss it. But dude, meaning and like meaning in the words that we use to describe that meaning to ourselves, huge. And he caught up on all that responsibility he dug from an early age. Yeah. For me, as I said, this humanizes Paul in a way that I don't think anything else could have, because it makes his interaction with Rudy that much more logical, right? The way that he lashed out, the way that he said certain things, the way that he approached whatever, right? It makes sense with all that responsibility and shit, right? His Maslow hierarchy of needs was not met. What happened after the fight and reconciliation was very different from the anime, was it? I think these chapters, in a way, are helping me grow and understand the characters. Even if Paul was a useless drunk towards the end, nobody took over the leadership role because he was the strongest of the group and had the family connections and Milla's. Yeah, I mean, let's be honest. Even today, connections mean a lot to a lot of people, right? Like it and or hate it. Sadly, it's true. Sadly, a lot of people thrive off of connections. I'm blown away. I'm blown away that time after time after time in this show, this novel, these characters are so fleshed out in a way that psychologically it's accurate. Psychologically, coming through a scenario where you've been displaced, guess what? We have many different coping mechanisms, right? In general, let me highlight some of these because you guys might not fully understand what I'm going with. Hold on. Here we go. We have many coping mechanisms that we use to deal with everyday stress: repression, denial, projection, displacement, regression, sublimation, right? A lot of these coping mechanisms that we have, you know, we tend to do in a way to go ahead and like set, for example, what did he do? He took on a lot of responsibilities in order to go ahead and like deal with a lot of that internal thing, right? He's now needed by his mates, right? There might be some, like, I wouldn't say denial, but some like repressing your thoughts, trying to repress your thoughts a little bit, while also sublimating like the fact that you can't save your family, so the only thing that you can go ahead and do is, you know, help others, right? You're trying to go ahead and like satisfy an impulse or satisfy, you know, like say your depression by drinking, which is only causing your depression even worse if we're gonna go with the like displacement. There's so many like, you know, coping mechanisms that are at play here, and cognitive distortions and cognitive issues at play. But let's be real, this is sort of what happens if it's a major trauma, and what Paul just went through is a major trauma. I feel like people would just take that for granted and throw it around, dude. But being displaced is one of the biggest traumas that I think anyone can go into. I think this chapter is why people got so up in arms about Paul getting shit on so hard. Yeah, but it's because if we're gonna be realistic, the anime doesn't build out Paul as much as this chapter just did. This chapter builds up Paul in a way that, like, you know, that's what I'm saying. Like, the OVA definitely needed something. Takes that displacement very literally. Yeah, yeah. But for you guys, and that's why, like, I was willing to say, like, hey, even like episode 16 and 17, we're a little too hard on Paul. You know, we are a little hard on Paul for that. And this whole thing over what Paul is, and seeing his displacement, seeing his journey and saving people, and seeing his cognitive distortions, seeing how his daughter was the only thing he had to live for, seeing the fact that, like, hey, he left on bad terms with all of his mates and he doesn't want to go ahead and like reach out to them, or he doesn't even know if they'd respond back to him, even though he's more than willing to go and lay out life, the responsibilities, the pressure, nobility, all of that, dude. It's surprising that Paul just didn't have a psyche break and break altogether. What up, NanoSag? How you doing? Welcome to stream. We just finished reading one big chapter of Paul here. Guys, all I can say is time after time, Mushoku Tensei is blowing my mind. And I think this has been one of those episodes where, or one of those chapters where my mind, in terms of what I understand about Paul, has grown significantly. No, exactly, Yoker. That's what I'm saying. Like, I can take back shit, like, I can say something, but the way that the anime presented it versus the way that the novel presented it, different. Way different. And I think that's a key reason why. Just according to RK Kaiku. But yeah, no, guys, that's exactly it. I am falling in love with these characters, and I feel like the more I'm getting to know about them, the more I'm like reading about them, the more that there's like I hate to put it this way. Yeah, it's an unfortunate thing that like time constraints affect anime and what they can show. Hate to put it this way, but now I'm excited to get through season 2. So I can go back and read, like, you know, I can come with you guys and read like the season 2 like chapters or whatever. We watched the Konosuba movie, Geek Me, and then we did a dating game with Ophelia and Caius, and now we're on this one. I know we say Ed is a wizard, but Ed isn't ready for season 2 and season 3. Honestly, if we're gonna be realistic about it, I think he was punching himself, JP. Look, with the context that we have now, I think he was punching himself. I know this is gonna sound weird. I know it's gonna sound weird, but with the context that the light novel gives us now, I think Paul was satisfying his impulse, right? Like his cognitive distortion of, I'm not good enough, I can't save my family, hearing the fact that he was there and he was like, I had a good time or whatever. He displaced his emotions. This is the coping mechanism that he used with it. And in a way, it's like he was trying to punch himself as well. Yeah, he did punch Rudius, right? Because Rudius was going on about whatever. That's still, like, that doesn't justify anything. But in terms of a coping mechanisms, people that do this are often because of a reflection of oneself. There's a mirror that's pointing up at yourself. You know? For example, you ever seen someone that, like, you say something that hits a nail so right on the nose that they punch a wall? And they punch a wall, you know, as a substitute for punching you in some instances, but at the same time because you're like hitting them on the thing. I mean, he said it earlier in the novel. He literally said it earlier in the novel where he's like, in the chapter that we read, what the fuck am I doing? He legit said, like, what am I doing? I could have been out there saving everyone, but I can't now because of the roles and expectations that are being placed on me because I have a daughter. I can't go out there and go try and like not screw around, but try and like actually look for my family. Because I have all these roles and responsibilities now. And that's a sense of displacement that is being said in there. That's a sense of, like, you know, a lot of, like, for example, sublimation is him taking on these roles because of the impulse of the anxiety and everything, right? Displacement is all of a sudden turning it into the negative way. And that's where I'm like, whew. Is it okay? No, abuse is abuse, right? Back in the day, like, we don't even gotta go that far. We can go 60 years. So in some cases, it's still today where people hit their kids and totally fine, right? That's why he's triggered when Rudy said he's got a girl on the side and he secretly agrees. Yeah, Yeah. Yeah. That's what I'm telling you, man. Like, for me, this chapter of the novel adds so much more depth. Like, if the depth was here already beforehand, now it's like here. Like, you can't even fucking see it because of the amount of character that it given. He could have, Masha think. He really could have, but let me ask you this. What did Paul do? When we talk about parataxic distortions, Norn became his light. And he says it in the novel. Norn became his light. And if he doesn't have his light, what happens? Yep. 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 This is beautiful. Because, like, as I said, like, reading this chapter, he might have fully collapsed. Exactly. I'm like, for me, the character of Paul, are his actions justified with Lilia? I'm like, you know, him punching Rudy. People back in their age, people did that. People don't give a shit, right? Nowadays, if you punch your kid, you might want to think a little bit before doing that. You know, they're kids. Kids are gonna be kids. But in terms of back then, people, I'm sure, as we know now, nobility is a lot of fucked up shit. You know, and they used to do a lot of stuff. Mega punch. But my main thing with all of this, though, is the amount of growth that it gives Paul, the amount of, like, this is the reason why he's doing it. This novel plants the reason why. This chapter that we read plants the reason why he displaces, plants the reason why he punches Rudy and why it carries so much weight, because in a big way, he's not just punching Rudy, but he's punching himself. He's punching the fact that he couldn't go and save his family because of all the roles and responsibilities that came with it. He's punching the narrative that came through. Yeah, exactly. Justified, no, but understandable. Absolutely. And as a therapist, our job is never to justify your actions. It's to understand why that happened. This chapter makes me understand. This chapter is amazing. Anyways, guys, I hope you guys have been enjoying the Mushoku Tensei talks, the Mushoku Tensei, you know, like chapter readings. I'm mind blown. Guys, let me know if you guys picked up on anything and maybe learned something new, or maybe even, like, you know, some questions that you may have had when you guys were reading this. Every single time that we do one of these chapters, my mind just keeps melding and expanding on each character and, like, the growth and everything. I bet you I'm just gonna be smiling like an idiot come season 2, man. Plus, it's very human how Paul wasn't immediately regretful. Yeah. What up, Ved? Guys, how do you guys feel? Are you guys enjoying this here on Twitch? Are you guys enjoying doing these chapter readings on YouTube? I hope you guys are practicing that self-care. Guys here, what do you guys think? Have you guys been enjoying them? Season 2 will be Hogwarts. And Ed will be Dumbledore. This is my first exposure to the series, but I'm intrigued. Caius, holy shit, that's right. Caius, what a way to come in here. Bro, oh no. It's nuts, dude. It's nuts. These readings have been very insightful to anime only. Yeah, I mean, like, for me, like, my level of everything of understanding is... I know, we spoiled Caius, guys. No. My level of understanding these characters has an appreciation, like appreciation for the author, an appreciation for, like, the community that has kept me safe from spoilers is huge, because y'all could have spoiled anything at any time and y'all didn't, and I fucking love you guys for doing that. I love you guys for, like, helping me get to a point where I can read something, right, and not, like, shit still comes off as a surprise and carries emotional weight to it. Like, there was various times when we were reading this, when I was reading this, I say we because I feel like we're all just reading this. When I was reading this, that, like, I was getting really emotional. Like I was straight up getting like actually emotional reading this, because I'm like, this poor man, dude. This poor man and his journey of what he's going through is huge. So thank you guys for not spoiling, and thank you guys so much for doing like justice and keeping the community safe and clean of all spoilers with the mods and everyone in here. Yeah, JP. That's why I'm like, fuck, dude. I wish I could turn back time. Oh no, Yoker. With that being said, hey YouTube, we appreciate you being here. Leave that comment, subscribe, let me know what you guys think. Yeah, I guess the thumbnail title is I was wrong about Paul. There you go. Here's the thumbnail picture for you editors. Wait, do you guys want one like it has to be something where it's like friend. Paul did nothing wrong confirmed. Is Ed? No, Ed. Do the Crimson Demon pose. Wait, which one? This one? This one? I was wrong about Paul. Clickbait 11 out of 10. Alright, emoji react 101. Wait, hold on. Let me only put up 10 minutes of an anime and just do this. Ooh, cool. You need one with a drink for the meme. Wait, what's the I'm sorry pose? Apology YouTube face. Here we go. I was wrong. YouTube apology face. Oh, dude. Editors are gonna have fun with that one. But honestly, YouTube, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hope you guys had a good time. Guys, I'm enjoying this. I'm enjoying reading the fuck out of this chapter by chapter. Yoker, I appreciate y'all. Have a good night. I'm glad that it was super fun. Honestly, I hope that you join in for the next dating game whenever we have one. I have made a severe lapse in judgment. I'm sorry. Just title the video I'm sorry and make it the Paul chapter read. Bonfire. That's actually a good one.